Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. In today's program, we are going to talk about the recent resurgence of terrorism in Pakistan, especially in the last year, 2023. There have been a number of horrific terrorist incidents, mostly carried out by banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan and Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa were the two main provinces which were largely hit by these horrific terrorist attacks. At the same time, we saw the security forces as well as the law enforcement agencies being vigilant all the time in order to bust wherever these terrorists were trying to carry out their nefarious terrorist attacks. Also, we have seen in the recent past, due to this particular resurgence of terrorism in Pakistan, Pakistani authorities have been asking the interim Afghan authorities, the Afghan Taliban, to take a concrete action as per the international obligation to eradicate and dismantle all the safe havens and sanctuaries inside Afghanistan. However, there had been denials on the part of the interim Afghanistan's authorities as to the presence of the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan on their soil in particular. Also, there is another dimension we've seen that recently in a significant presser, the Foreign Secretary of Pakistan, Mr. Cyrus Sajjad Qazi, also shared the details. In fact, the startling revelations were made by him regarding India's involvement in the killing of two Pakistani nationals on Pakistani soil. Also, earlier we had seen there were a lot of occasions when the Pakistani authorities had shared the irrefutable evidence regarding India's state sponsorship of terrorism in Pakistan. Also, as we also know that a new democratically elected government will be taking over the reins of power after the February 8th elections. Now, because of this recent resurgence of terrorism, because of various factors, how bigger this particular challenge is going to be for the newly elected government? What's required in the immediate terms in order to deal with this particular threat? We'll be taking this important topic up for discussion in today's show. For that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Sarfraz Ahmad Rana. He's security analyst. Mr. Rana, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. On Skype at the same time, we are honored to have been joined by Lieutenant General retired Talat Masood. He's the senior analyst. General Masood, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, General Masood. Now, as we have seen, there were considerable large number of fatalities related to terrorist incidents that happened in Pakistan, and in those terrorist acts, the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan or its affiliates were involved most of the times, and Pakistani authorities have been asking the interim Afghan authorities to take a concrete action against these TTP militants who are based on the Afghan soil. How do you think Pakistan should be engaging with the interim Afghan authorities? Because we've seen there had been repeated denials on the part of the interim Afghan authorities as to the presence of the banned TTP militants there.
Well, I think as far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan has always tried to sort of impress upon the Afghan government that they must control their, the TTP, which is operating from Afghanistan. That is one of the major concerns of Pakistan, that they seem to ignore that, and they have given a lot of space, especially in the border areas of Pakistan and Afghanistan, to these people, and they have been exploiting that, and they have been using that for launching attacks in Pakistan and creating a very serious security situation for Pakistan. And also it's resulting in sort of the cordial relations and the amount of Pakistan that sacrifices that its military and its army in particular, and also the civilian defense forces and also the people in that bordering areas. And they have made because of Afghanistan's problems. We were hoping that Afghanistan would realize, because it is in their interest, and especially a country which remains isolated and the only few friends that are left, like Pakistan, China, and one or two others. But apart from that, despite that, I don't think Afghanistan Taliban government is really cooperating to the extent that we expect from them, because it is
Right,
in
Jana
their
Masood,
larger
I seek your
interest.
pardon for the interjection over here. As you already mentioned, that there should be a realization among the Taliban ranks that it's Pakistan and China, the most important regional countries. And what are the ideal options at this point in time when we talk about the approach of the interim Afghan authorities when it comes to addressing the major concern of Pakistan regarding the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, as well as that particular concern which has once again been clearly reiterated by China also, that the interim Afghan authorities should firmly combat all forms of terrorist forces there on the Afghanistan soil. So what are the natural ideal options if the Afghan Taliban want to prove that they are credible, and if they are looking for that kind of recognition from the international community in particular?
Well, I think the first requirement is that they should have full control over the areas bordering Pakistan. That is the first requirement. Then, secondly, there has to be no laxity on the part of the Afghan government, and not only on the part of the Afghan government, but those forces which they have deployed, on the border, and security forces of and border, units of Afghanistan. They should really comply with the orders of the Afghan government, because they keep on saying that there is no such thing as the attacks from Afghanistan. Our area is under control, but it is not under their control, because what they are saying is that their policy, obviously, for Afghanistan, there are not many friends. They are so isolated, in fact, and Pakistan and China are the only two countries which have helped them in order to play a certain role and improve their economy and also improve their security. And and we have suffered a lot over the last several decades, actually, because of Afghanistan, and keeping their millions of refugees in Pakistan and all that. And despite that, they don't seem to understand Pakistan's real concerns. They are not doing enough, uh, and they are not. If they are able to control in their own country terrorism, there is no reason why they should not be able to control the border areas. So I think what they have been, my own view is that they think that it is very difficult for them to control TTP, because they have been their partners during their struggle for independence. And I think that is the only reason. And then, even if the interim government of Afghanistan does, try to comply, ensure that there is no trespassing and no violence being done across the borders, I think the people on the ground are not really complying with the policies of the Afghan government.
Right. So this particular reason, as per your understanding, Jana Masood, that you've just said, that they're not able to take that particular decisive action against the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan because they were partners during their struggle against the foreign troops. Now, you already also mentioned there was a lot that Pakistani authorities over the years had been doing for Afghan people also. We also saw that crucial role Pakistan played during the Afghan peace and reconciliation process as well as after the international troops withdrawal, the kind of dire humanitarian and economic crisis Afghanistan was faced with. It was Pakistan which was advocating continuously at the international fora of the continuity of the engagement of the international community with the Afghanistan's people. So, I mean, if we try to analyze the balance of this equation, the partners during that struggle, the help that came from the TTP ranks towards the Afghan Taliban, and the kind of measures and efforts Pakistan had been doing generally for the Afghan people, for overall welfare of them, which one do you think naturally should have more weight?
Well, obviously, I think the amount of help that Pakistan has extended, not only help, but the amount of sacrifices that Pakistan has made in order to help Afghanistan and also ensure that it is free of terrorism and it is also free of foreign occupation. I think it's remarkable, despite the fact that, it had to make huge sacrifices itself. Then, look, we have been sort of keeping millions of Afghan refugees, and we are proud of that because I think it is sort of a natural instinct with people of Pakistan to be very hospitable to refugees, and I think they definitely deserved to be helped, and we have helped them right up till today, and we still have. And then, obviously, we also have been guarding our own borders. But if a friendly country like Afghanistan does not comply with the norms of reciprocity, in the sense that it ensures that there is no trespassing of militant forces like TTP and other, Islamic Jihad and others crossing the border and giving them a free hand, it becomes very difficult for Pakistan. So I think there are TTP people of Pakistan also do use Afghanistan territory for crossing when they know that the Pakistan military is going to act against them. So I think a cooperation is extremely necessary. And I would also to sort of emphasize, in fact, that it is also equally in the interest of Afghanistan, because Afghanistan's reputation globally has been so marred that there are only few friends left of Afghanistan, China and Pakistan. And if they really do this, tomorrow the similar thing could also happen to China, in the sense that their border is also sensitive. And there are provinces within China which are also Muslim, and there are certain movements there also taking place. And if the TTP and others try to exploit that also, it's very risky. So that is why China is also very much concerned that the TTP, the Taliban government in Afghanistan has not been able to comply with the general norms of neighborly relations and its obligations towards ensuring that the border is secure.
Right, General Masood, I'll come back to you with this particular dimension, that how Pakistan and China in collaboration can advance their particular concern when it comes to combating and dealing with all forms of terrorist forces based on Afghanistan's soil. Let me proceed with the discussion. Mr. Rana, now, what are the options with the Pakistani authorities at the moment? We've discussed this particular issue a number of times. There's been a lack of will on the part of the Afghan Taliban. There have been denials from them that the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan doesn't exist on the Afghanistan soil, and it is up to Pakistan that they should be dealing with this particular threat. Now, on one side, they had made that particular international commitment that they won't allow the Afghan soil to be used for the terrorist activities against any other country. Now, this repeated pattern of back-to-back horrific, heinous terrorist activities, especially when we talk about the year 2023, and above that, when there were demands made by the Pakistani authorities, there were denials by the Afghan authorities. What options are ahead for Pakistani authorities? Should Pakistan try to give or show some sort of incentives to interim Afghan authorities, or Pakistan should be dealing with them from the position of strength? Which of either of the two options is more suitable at this point in time?
Thank you, Jawad, for having me in your show. One thing is very clear, that Afghan regime currently is simply allowing Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan the strategic depth to carry out all the terrorist activities against Pakistan. That's very clear. And what are the options with Pakistan? Of course, that Pakistan must come.
When you talk of this strategic depth, the Tehrik-e-Taliban Afghanistan is using the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan in order to create a strategic depth in Pakistan.
Of course, they are providing the safe havens. Within
they are providing, but what's the requirement? What is the need when we try to understand that perspective of the Afghan Taliban?
Of course, they are ideologically.
Despite Pakistan,
they are ideological cousins.
Doing so much, they are the ideological cousins. Okay, so that
why they have taken the war of two decades? 20 years. Why they have taken
just on the basis of that logic, they want to create a strategic depth in Pakistan, trying to allow them, let them regroup on the Afghanistan soil, just to create a strategic depth against Pakistan, which had been facilitating the Afghan people in all sorts and forms, whether it was hosting the Afghan refugees for so many decades, whether it was assisting in that Afghan peace and reconciliation process, the outcome which was that Doha Peace Accord, and naturally the Tehrik-e-Taliban Afghanistan took over the power in Kabul as a result of that. And when international troops withdrew, it was Pakistan who was playing a crucial role as far as the evacuation efforts were concerned. After there was a dire economic crisis, humanitarian crisis over there because of the repeated failures of the last Hamid Karzai and Ashraf Ghani's government. Over there, the governance failure at all scales. Why would Afghan Taliban want a strategic depth by allowing banned Tehrik-e-Taliban to carry out their nefarious designs here?
Jawad, first we have to make a distinction between whether the current Afghan government or Afghan regime is a representative of the people of Afghanistan. So that is very important thing, of course. We have to know. And of course, Pakistan, it's not the only time that Pakistan had made contributions for the Afghan people. Of course, in the past 7 decades, Pakistan had made the massive sacrifices for the Afghan people. That's not the first time, right? But what was the outcome? Of course, that bridge was not basically filled, and so many things. But as far as the question pertaining that what are the options with Pakistan is concerned, that Pakistan has to declare a state of urgency, number one, and Pakistan should have to wage a war at multi-dimensional level. Not only in the battleground, but of course, Pakistan has to follow a very clear direction and hard-headed direction, no appeasement policy. What sort of a
direction and hard-headed direction and a multidimensional approach when it comes to dealing with this resurgence of terrorism, especially when we were successfully able to break the backbone of terrorism when we had that previously? And there was expectation on the part of Pakistani authorities and the public at large here as well, that since Pakistan had been a very crucial player in that particular Afghan peace and reconciliation process, leading to that outcome of the Doha Peace Accord, that particular international commitment the Afghan Taliban made with the international community overall. So what sort of multidimensional approach right now is required? Do you think it should actually emanate from the origin of that 20-point National Action Plan?
Yes, National Action Plan is important, and when I say that the clear approach should be resorted and should be adopted by the government of Pakistan, that means that Pakistan make no distinction between those who carry out terrorist activities against Pakistan, those who support them, who harbor them, provide them the safe havens, and also their apologists within the territory of Pakistan, within Pakistan. So Pakistan should not make any distinction, between all those elements.
There hasn't been any distinction made in that particular
there had
regard.
Been a distinction, good Taliban, bad Taliban.
No,
Pakistan
that was long time before. Now, since Pakistan was hit hard by terrorism, there was no distinction at all within Pakistan made. That's why we saw, especially after that, massacre of the innocent children in Army Public School, there was a clear-cut stance on the part of authorities from all ranks, from all the political spectrum, as well as the armed forces of Pakistan, that there was no distinction in regard to that particular, either you are a good Taliban or a bad Taliban. So when we talk about this particular phase of resurgence of terrorism, it particularly pertains to that banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, which was, of course, involved in that horrific incident of 2014 back in at Army Public School. So the distinction, perhaps there is a need of having that approach. We know that law enforcement agencies are working day and night in order to bust all those people who are trying to carry out those nefarious activities over here. So what approach now in order to secure the border at the same time and dealing with the threat? When you talk about the people which are continuously being targeted and hunted down by the security forces of Pakistan.
Of course, the border has to be protected, which it has already been, right? Number one, and of course, Pakistan security agencies and they also, Pakistan security agencies, for example, there is a need to be vigilant, on that side as well. And now, to my understanding, of course, Pakistan has to now approach the Northern Alliance as well. Northern Alliance, Pakistan has to, involve and some sort of, open the negotiation process with them as well. And, as General Saab was talking about, to involve other regional actors, for example, Iran.
Okay, so when we talk about the regional actors, we go on a broader spectrum, right? Yeah. So we have to take the major capitals of the regional countries on board. We've seen the concerns coming from China also in that particular regard, right?
Including Iran as well.
Iran as well, right? There have been concerns from Moscow as well. Moscow format consultations also happening also. So they're also been asking the Afghan Taliban to, fulfill the international obligation. Now, when you specifically talk about Pakistani authorities approaching the Northern Alliance, to what advantages do you think this particular approach could be? From
the perspective of why, because it's been very long time that Northern Alliance has been fighting against those terrorist organizations which had been operating in Afghanistan. So Pakistan has to take now on board that that is a common threat for Pakistan, and not just for Pakistan. Why? Because this threat will not be confined only to Pakistan, not to Iran, not to Turkey, not to Russia, even not to China. So of course, we have to adopt an approach which is inclusive. All the regional actors must be on board, and including the Northern Alliance. Why? Because Northern Alliance is the only alliance in Afghanistan that can give a tough time to these terrorist activities, which are currently giving tough time to Pakistan, and they are successfully carrying out such attacks against Pakistan.
Do you think they are in a position and have that very much capacity, especially after the Kabul takeover by the Afghan Taliban and the way it happened, the kind of speed and the pace at which, and without any sort of resistance? Of course, there was an expectation, the 20 years of training, and to that particular Afghan National Security Forces, they gave a very safe passage to the Afghan Taliban to reach to the gates of Kabul at that particular time. Where was Northern Alliance at that particular time?
Panjshir Valley is a strategic space which has never been, claimed as, those people's territory. Panjshir Valley, currently Northern Alliance has been operating in Panjshir Valley, and it is their safe domain. So of course, Pakistan can open, any channel to approach them and to reach out to them and to talk to them, regarding all these issues, and especially the issue of terrorism.
Well, rightly pointed out that Panjshir Valley happens to be the stronghold of the
Very
Northern
strong,
Alliance.
Yes.
It has never been concurred.
Never been concurred.
By any.
Yeah.
So let me take this particular point to General Masood also. General Masood, what's your understanding now? What are the options with the Pakistani authorities after that repeated denial by the Afghan authorities? Do you think this particular, if that particular pattern goes on in future ahead as well, then should Pakistan probably consider of giving some sort of an incentive to the Afghan Taliban to make them fulfill that particular promise of combating all forms of terrorist groups, especially the TTP, on Afghanistan soil? Or should Pakistan be dealing from here onwards with the Afghan Taliban from a position of strength? And the third option, going and approaching the Northern Alliance based in the Panjshir Valley. What's your understanding of that, sir?
Well, I don't think that you make compromises or you approach the Northern Alliance. You are really sort of increasing the hostility and making things more complex for yourself. Because Northern Alliance, even if it sides with Pakistan, which is most unlikely, the fact remains that it will further annoy the Taliban government, and then they would really facilitate all this. The thing is that we have to impress upon Afghanistan that, uh, to facilitate trade, to bring about economic progress in Afghanistan, you have to have peace on the borders. And for that, you have to have, no such hostility or hostile actions between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So I think there is not sufficient realization, which is surprising because apart from other things, the Afghan Taliban are a fairly sensible people when it comes to their self-interest. And it goes against their self-interest that the border is so volatile and they are all the time sort of creating problems for Pakistan, that their trade and economic conditions do not improve the extent that they could. And I think if they improve their relations with Pakistan, and if the government conducts itself like a normal civilized government, which cooperates with the neighbors, ensures that its territory is not used uh, against the neighbors, and especially neighbors which are extremely friendly, I think it will gain so much from it that you would be surprised. And also, I think there is a need, if I would, suggest to the Afghan government, it is in their interest uh, not to really keep such a terrible hold on their people and give them some freedom, both to the men and women of Afghanistan, and also focus on education, on focus on trade and commerce. It will improve the lives of the people. Then you will not have to control them like what you are doing. You have put them in a prison. So I think, and you are not exposing your people, especially the women folk, to the world. I mean, it's entirely a sort of an island to itself. So I think Afghanistan, apart from the fact that they have, in a way, uh, uh, created problems for Pakistan and other neighbors, the fact remains is that they are not, they are really harming their own interests, and they do not listen to good advice coming from China, from Pakistan, and from all well-wishers of theirs. And it's like a huge prison, Afghanistan. And it's very sad that the people of Afghanistan are suffering because of these policies. And we mean well. In fact, that is why you find there is so much of reluctance on the part of the Afghan refugees who have lived here in Pakistan to go to Afghanistan. You could see that how they were mentally and emotionally disturbed when they were being asked to sort of leave Pakistan, because that is the compulsion, economic reasons, and also, I think, relationship with Afghanistan.
Right, General Masood, now there is the development when we talk about Afghanistan's relationship with China. As I already mentioned, there was a statement by the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin, the one part of which very categorically emphasizes on Afghan Taliban to take action and firmly combat all forms of terrorist forces. We have seen Chinese president, as per the information that is shared by the Afghan Foreign Ministry, that announced on January the 30th that it accepted the ambassador credentials from the representative of Afghanistan, Maulvi Abdullah, who is known as Bilal Karimi. So this acceptance of the credentials of the representative of Afghanistan on the part of the Chinese side, what's the significance of this gesture? What does that particularly depict?
Well, what I've got from, I mean, I really didn't understand exactly because the voice was not very clear. But
Masood, that Chinese president has accepted the credentials. This is the information shared by the Afghan Foreign Ministry, that the representative of Afghanistan, Maulvi Abdullah's credentials have been accepted by the Chinese president. Then there was a statement by the Chinese Foreign Ministry, which also asked in that particular statement, one part emphasizes on the Afghan Taliban to firmly combat all forms of terrorist forces. At the same time, that particularly goes on to say that China believes that Afghanistan should not be excluded from the international community. So firstly, what does that particular acceptance of the credentials of the representative of Afghanistan by the Chinese side depict? What's the significance of this gesture, and what's the understanding, as per your understanding, what's the meaning of this particular thing, that China believes that Afghanistan should not be excluded from the international community? Isn't it the same stance that Pakistani authorities had also been repeatedly saying, that there should be a continuous engagement with the Afghan people?
Well, I think what the Chinese have done is done really the right thing to do at this moment. And I think they have taken the lead. They have the confidence. They think that isolating Afghanistan, keeping them completely cut off from the rest of the world, is making things worse, not only for Afghanistan, for the region, but more so for the people of Afghanistan. And I think the Chinese have, they always think long term. And they've realized that if you cut off Afghanistan the way that the world has done, then what is going to happen is that they would be so introverted, the whole country, and they will be completely cut off from the rest of the world. And their hostility towards everyone would be so great, and they would be suffering so much because of this isolation, self-imposed isolation, or the isolation which has been created because of non-contact or refusal to sort of make any contact with Afghanistan, I think would harm not only Afghanistan but the region. So I think China is always looking at problems in a very sort of, apart from looking at it in a very deep way, they also look from point of view as to how these policies will affect in the long term. And taking a long-term view, I think this was a very good idea because the more contact the countries around and even other countries of the world have with Afghanistan, the people of Afghanistan, the government of Afghanistan will then have more confidence and would relax and not hold its people and the country a hostage to their own beliefs. So I think China, as I have always thought, has one remarkable quality, that they do not look at problems just, in a very short term, but they always look at it in a long-term perspective. And I think this is a very good thing. And in fact, it is time now, provided Afghans also show laxity in their treatment of women, in the way that they should control their borders, it is very likely that Pakistan might also review its policy of having a full-fledged ambassador in Afghanistan.
Right. Mr. Rana, what's your understanding of this particular move, and especially when the acceptance of credentials of the representative of Afghanistan from the Chinese side, at the same time Chinese Foreign Ministry is saying that we believe that diplomatic recognition of Afghan government will come naturally as the concerns of various parties are effectively addressed?
A Chinese approach purely, is a problem-solving approach towards this very region. And number one. Number two, of course, China is just trying to engage Afghan government positively through economic cooperation and through political and diplomatic cooperation. And rightly said that, Afghanistan should not be excluded. Why? Because of the people of Afghanistan, and already there is a humanitarian crisis. And if there is a humanitarian crisis, of course, there will be a trickle-down effect throughout the region. So that is a very positive approach by China. And thirdly, China has some geoeconomic approach towards this very region, and China cannot, achieve those economic goals and objective without having a peaceful regional atmosphere and environment.
Right.
That's very important. And Afghanistan is located at a very strategic place. I mean, that is basically bordering Russia, China, Pakistan, Central Asian states, and all the major, And if there is a problem in Afghanistan, so of course, every a country located in this region will be affected. So that is a very right approach by the Chinese government.
Your point is well taken. Unfortunately, we are short of time. I'll have to jump to that particular aspect, that dimension of the resurgence of terrorism, and especially state sponsorship of terrorism, especially when we talk about that very significant pressure by Foreign Secretary of Pakistan, Mr. Cyrus Sajjad Qazi, of India's involvement in killing of 2 Pakistani nationals on Pakistani soil, which he said is a violation of Pakistan's sovereignty. Not only that, but also the United Nations Charter, as well as there were some conclusions made in that particular presser. How Pakistan should be taking this particular case of India, that there is irrefutable evidence of its involvement in state sponsoring the terrorist activity here in Pakistan of India. So how should it be brought onto the international fora?
Of course, there are multiple international organizations and multiple international forums, on which Pakistan should take up this very issue, and especially Pakistan should, project and present the Indian credentials with respect to human rights violation since 2014, and with each passing day, the human rights record has been worsening in India. I mean, since 2014, since the Modi came to power. So of course, and also Pakistan can, support its, qualify its argument, I mean, by supporting the documents which are produced by European Union and some other organization, including United Nations, and also by the State Department of United States of America. So of course, yeah.
But I mean, don't you think these back-to-back incidents of India going for the assassinations on the foreign soil, breaching the sovereignty of the independent states? Firstly, it was caught there in Canada, Canadian authorities sharing the startling revelations again of Indian government agents involved in the killing of a Canadian national on Canadian soil. Then there was an assassination attempt on the US soil. Now irrefutable evidence Pakistan is sharing with the international community. What should major international powers, especially the Western powers, especially when you talk about Canada, the US and other major European allies, how should they be going about India after these revelations in particular?
Theoretically speaking, Indian foreign policy currently, you talk about the network of spies at international levels, and human rights violations, and violation of sovereignty of other countries, sending the spies to kill, on missions, and to kill the people on other country soils. So I mean, that is basically the Cotelian logic, and that is basically driven by Cotelia, who basically encourage to build an army of spies, who basically support and promote and project a notion that your a neighbor can never be your friend, and so on and so forth.
Okay, if a neighbor can't be your friend, what about the US and Canada? If
they are not India's neighbors, Canada.
But that's what I'm asking. If a neighbor can't be your friend, so the US and Canada are not the neighbors
they are
of
not
India.
the neighbors.
So why India is carrying out those
the
assassinations?
other aspect, like build a spy networks, and send the spies to other countries and on the missions, right, and to kill on the foreign soils, and so that is the reflection of the Cotelian logic under this Modi regime. And who's the chief architect of all these things is the Ajit Doval. Ajit Doval is basically projecting these kinds of things in the Indian foreign policy and national security.
Right, General Masood, what's your understanding of how basically Pakistani authorities should go about exposing? Of course, Pakistani authorities have been exposing a number of times with irrefutable evidence of India's state sponsorship of terrorism. What ideally happens to be the onus on the shoulders of the Western nations in particular, who have been recently hit by India's state sponsorship of terrorism and assassinations carried out over there on their soils?
Well, I think there should have been a much stronger reaction from the Western side, but there was absolutely no reaction apart from the fact that the US tried to sort of, cool, they tried to sort of, in a way, pacify the anger of the Canadian government, which was so justified. And they also tried to sort of mediate between Canada and, well, they wouldn't call it officially mediation, but they definitely tried to sort of impress upon the Indians that they should go for a very serious, inquiry as to how this was conducted by the foreign ministry itself. A thing like that, somebody within the foreign ministry of India was accomplice or, was involved in this Canadian affair. So I think this was a very serious matter in which the Indian government was fully involved. I mean, their foreign office and their security elements were involved in this episode. So I think, but as you know, the Americans did not want that the relationship or India's problems should be aggravated. They are so keen to sort of support India, even if it does all the wrong things in the world, because they think that it is a counter to China. They also think that it's, economic conditions and its political status globally should be enhanced, and it will receive a setback if this is pursued. But I think it has definitely soiled its relations with Canada. Its image has suffered seriously, and I think Pakistan is quite justified that it is also bringing to light the sort of manipulations which are done by the Indians on the Pakistani side.
Right, Lieutenant General retired Talat Masood joining us on Skype. Senior Analyst, thank you very much for your time for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Sarfraz, Ahmad, Rana, Security Analyst joining us in the studio. Mr. Rana, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight also. I really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's show. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.